St. Augustine, Florida, December 8, 2024. It was another sweltering morning typical of this land of beaches and bizarre stories. At a bustling intersection on U.S. Highway A1A, Alexandria Mason, a middle-aged woman embodying the nothing is impossible spirit so uniquely Floridian, was pulled over by the police. The reason? She matched the description of a fugitive wanted for felony drug charges. But in true Florida fashion, Alexandria quickly turned what could have been a simple traffic stop into a breathless high-speed chase that could only happen in the Sunshine State. It was one of those quintessentially sunny, blisteringly hot days in St. Augustine, Florida, where the sun beat down relentlessly on the cobblestone streets, casting shimmering waves of heat off the pavement. The kind of day so stiflingly humid that even the normally proud palm trees drooped in exhaustion, their leaves hanging limply as if begging for relief. Alexandria Mason, a woman as much a part of Florida's unpredictable charm as its wild weather, found herself once again on the side of the road. The source of her latest roadside stop? Another police cruiser, its flashing lights cutting through the haze of the midday heat, drawing attention in a way that Alexandria had long since grown accustomed to. A middle-aged woman with wild, untamed hair that seemed to mirror her equally untamable spirit, Alexandria's presence was as fierce and unpredictable as the state she called home. With a personality as intense and powerful as a hurricane barreling across the coastline, she had mastered the art of standing out. She was the type of person who didn't just live in Florida. She embodied it. The officers who pulled her over that day, however, were undeterred by her idiosyncratic flair. They informed her that she matched the description of a fugitive wanted on serious felony drug charges, a claim that Alexandria, ever the skeptic, found hard to believe. As she stood there, facing the flashing lights and the uniformed officers, her mind raced with thoughts of how she might turn this latest run-in into something just as memorable as all the others. Wearing a neon pink t-shirt emblazoned with the phrase "blessed, stressed, and Florida obsessed," and sporting curly, blonde hair that looked as though it had been blown through a storm, Alexandria Mason wasn't just a woman. She was a mobile phenomenon in the heart of St. Augustine. She stood out in a crowd without even trying, her flashy appearance impossible to miss. Every step she took seemed to scream that she didn't care who was watching, but rather made a bold statement about her larger-than-life personality. As her car came to a stop in front of the officers, Alexandria didn't show any signs of fear or worry. On the contrary, she emphasized her presence with a forceful wave of her hand as she slammed the car door shut, making a loud, echoing bang. Her eyes, wide open, were filled with a combination of indignation and exhaustion, as if she had heard too many excuses and explanations throughout her life. With a confident stride and no hesitation, she stepped out of the car and walked straight toward the officers, as if she wanted to confront them before they could even get close. Not one to be easily subdued, Alexandria walked like a warrior fresh out of battle, ready to face anyone who might dare to make her feel disrespected or looked down upon. Her expression was the perfect blend of frustration and pride, adding to the tension of the situation. Alexandria wasn't just any ordinary woman. She was a phenomenon, a fascinating story unfolding right here and now, one that would surely make waves long after the encounter was over.
"This is the 4th time this week," she shouted, her arms flailing dramatically like a preacher delivering a fiery sermon to a rapt audience. "You guys clearly don't know who you're dealing with. I'm not just some ordinary woman. I'm Alexandria Mason." Her voice rang out with such confidence, as though she was standing atop the world. She continued, undeterred, "I graduated from Harvard, don't forget. I'm a former CIA asset. And let's not forget, I've been pardoned by not one, not two, but 3 U.S. presidents." This woman was not merely a fugitive on the run. With her pompous attitude and over-the-top proclamations, Alexandria didn't just make those around her jump in surprise. She made them wonder whether they were standing before a miraculous woman or an arrogant, delusional orator. This passage doesn't just bring humor to the scene. It shows how she could transform a typical traffic stop into a grand, exaggerated performance, from her Ivy League education to her self-proclaimed connections with powerful people. Her arrogance didn't stop at flaunting her past. It was also evident in the way she regarded the officers before her as weak and ignorant, incapable of understanding the significance of what she carried within. Her words were a declaration of overwhelming confidence, but they also reflected a deeper truth. She was desperately trying to convince herself and the world that she was a person of importance, even though her actions did little to prove it. The officers, clearly caught between amusement and skepticism, exchanged glances filled with doubt. Alexandria's every word rang out like a dramatic sermon, while they struggled to keep their faces serious. One of the officers, a young lieutenant barely old enough to rent a car, muttered under his breath, "Here we go again." His words sounded like both a lament and a statement of experience, a recognition of the bizarre situations he had encountered before. As Alexandria continued her grand speech about her illustrious past, a past that anyone could tell was entirely fabricated, the older officer, who was far too familiar with such bizarre encounters, couldn't help but sigh. He stepped aside, brushing off Alexandria's noise, and pulled out his phone to check her records, though he already knew the result, nothing but a trail of misleading details. The quick investigation uncovered a strange contradiction, as if it were from a Hollywood detective movie. On the surface, Alexandria's past seemed completely normal, even boring. There were no signs of a dazzling history. She wasn't a Harvard graduate, there was no trace of a CIA career, and certainly no mention of any presidential pardons. The information about her, if not entirely mundane, at least failed to spark anyone's curiosity. But it was precisely the simplicity that highlighted an undeniable element, a serious criminal warrant tightly linked to the name Alexandria Mason. This made everything confusing and contradictory, as normality seemed to hide a dark past, where nothing was coincidental. Was she an ordinary person misunderstood by the legal system, or a figure with a dark past trying to cover up her crimes under a completely contrasting facade? As the senior officer slowly made his way back to his patrol car, preparing to deliver the news that would change the course of this seemingly routine traffic stop, Alexandria Mason stood by her weathered, beat-up truck. Her posture was defiant, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, eyes narrowed with an expression that suggested she was both waiting for something to happen and daring it to. The scorching Florida sun beat down relentlessly, but she seemed impervious to its heat, her cool exterior belying the swirling storm of irrational confidence bubbling just beneath the surface. Alexandria was not just any ordinary driver caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was a woman with a history, one who had likely spun so many outlandish tales that even she had lost track of the lines between truth and fiction. And as she stood there in the midst of St. Augustine's bustling streets, it was clear that this moment, this seemingly trivial traffic stop, was just another chapter in her ever-escalating saga of bizarre encounters with the law. With a slight tilt of her head, a smug grin crept onto her face, as if she already knew the story was far from over and she was determined to be the one pulling the strings. What Alexandria failed to realize, however, was that this wasn't just another minor inconvenience in a long list of perceived slights. This routine traffic stop was poised to erupt into something far more dramatic, a spectacle that would leave behind a trail of chaos and bewilderment. It was about to escalate in ways that would stretch the boundaries of logic and reason, solidifying her place in history as not just a woman in trouble with the law, but as the quintessential embodiment of a phenomenon that could only exist in the heart of Florida. In this state of strange and unpredictable happenings, Alexandria Mason was about to become a legend, and the officer returning with the news would soon discover that even the most mundane of interactions could quickly spiral into an unforgettable tale of anarchy, resilience, and unapologetic Florida madness. When the officers began to explain the reason for the stop, Alexandria hesitated not at all, immediately launching into a dramatic speech, as if preparing for an audition in a Hollywood movie. Her words spilled out rapidly, full of passion, like an actor on stage seeking to draw all attention to herself. She began listing a series of symptoms she was suffering from, each illness seemingly more severe than the last, from Parkinson's-like tremors to the terrible cancer she had self-diagnosed. She described in detail her joint pains, spine issues that made sitting for long periods nearly impossible, all delivered dramatically, making it easy to forget that she was suspected of being a fugitive criminal. Her words weren't just a tale of health issues. They seemed more like a monologue designed to convince the listener that she was facing serious problems and deserved absolute sympathy. However, amidst her complaints about the symptoms and ailments she claimed to have, Alexandria seemed oblivious to the fact that the officers were doing their jobs with patience and professionalism. She continuously cast herself as the victim, despite no one asking her to prove her health, even asking an odd question, "Are you sure you're not participating in a government conspiracy?" It was as if she was the main character in a long-running TV series, where everything could be explained by a woman daring to stand up against the injustice she believed was being done to her. "I have Parkinson's-like symptoms, stage 4 cancer, and, oh my God, my spine is basically dust," she lamented, her voice full of agony as though each word drained her of energy. Her eyes widened, as if to display her suffering, yet her body moved with surprising vigor, hardly weak. She clutched her lower back, hands tightening around her waist as if hoping to find a way to ease the unbearable pain. However, the only thing visible in her gestures was exaggeration, as if she was using every opportunity to emphasize the desperation of her self-created condition. "You guys are lucky I'm still able to drive." This remark came across as a smug warning, but there was a hint of self-awareness that her actions were a test of her own endurance, and possibly the officers as well. In that moment, the tragic portrayal she was giving had become a tool, a way to manipulate the situation, as if daring everyone around her to say, "If I can drive in this condition, you must admit I have a strength beyond what you think. I could drop dead right now." This wasn't just an ordinary exaggeration, it was a strong call for attention, a paradoxical warning. Though she spoke of death and weakness, all her actions and words gave the opposite impression. She wasn't weak, but rather someone both strong and cunning. She had no intention of surrendering. On the contrary, she was trying to create a shield to protect herself from responsibility. While she exaggerated her symptoms, there was a clear contradiction in her behavior, as there were no obvious signs that she was truly too weak to continue driving or engage in a dangerous chase. The absurdity in her performance was a blend of weakness and strength, tragic words and defiant actions. One officer, clearly used to odd excuses, remained calm. He tilted his head, asking indifferently, "Ma'am, if you have such serious conditions, why are you driving 60 miles per hour in a school zone?" Without hesitation, Alexandria countered immediately. "I've served this country on secret missions. My name was even erased from my birth certificate. Got it? If anyone should be arrested here, it's you for harassing a valuable government asset." She spoke with a confidence as if revealing a national secret, but the skeptical expressions on the officers' faces turned the scene into a dark comedy. Anyone witnessing it from afar might not know whether to laugh or feel sympathy. Everything changed rapidly when the deputy mentioned the warrant. "Ma'am, we need you to step out of the vehicle," he said calmly. Alexandria froze, her eyes scanning the rearview mirror and then the gear shift. In a moment that could only be described as a Florida ninja move, she slammed her foot on the gas. The old Ford F-150 roared to life, charging forward as if resurrected from an action movie. "Oh my God! This is really a joke!" one officer yelled as the chase officially began. The dilapidated F-150, with its squeaky brakes and dangling rearview mirror, suddenly reached an astonishing speed, over 120 miles per hour. Though it looked like a machine on the verge of falling apart, it sped off as though controlled by a NASCAR veteran. Florida Highway Patrol cars repeatedly attempted pit maneuvers to stop Alexandria's truck, but all failed. Each time she escaped the police spinout, Alexandria yelled through the window, "You'll never catch a patriot like me." Her left hand raised a defiant finger, while her right hand steered the wheel with surprising skill, keeping the truck speeding down the highway. Red lights, sirens, and the officers shouting didn't faze Alexandria. She wasn't just a fugitive, She was the star of Florida's Grand Chase. People along the route could only catch a glimpse of her truck before it disappeared into the smoke and the chaotic sound of sirens behind. The spectacular chase ended in chaos when Alexandria's truck slammed into a silver Prius, driven by a yoga teacher on her way to a class. The Prius spun in slow motion, colliding with a curb before stopping with its front end completely crushed. Meanwhile, Alexandria's truck continued barreling like a cannonball, hitting 3 police cars that had blocked the road before getting wedged between a metal fence and a streetlight, its tires screeching before coming to a full stop. The officers hurried to approach the truck, cautious yet urgent. But just before they could open the door, Alexandria pushed the door open and stepped out dramatically, as if walking out of a Hollywood movie. Clutching her neck, she screamed theatrically, "This is police brutality. You've broken my neck, made my back worse. Who's going to be responsible for this?" Unfazed by the accusations, the officers quickly handcuffed her. This only escalated Alexandria's agitation, and she shouted, her voice booming as though giving a lecture at an international conference, "I've been pardoned. Look it up. My name is Alexandria Mason, a CIA legend. You will regret treating a patriotic woman like this." Despite her resistance, the officers maintained professionalism, trying to control the situation while enduring Alexandria's unceasing performance. Bystanders stopped to watch, recording with their phones, turning the arrest into an unforgettable spectacle on that afternoon in St. Augustine. As officers led Alexandria Mason toward the squad car, her performance reached new levels of absurdity. She twisted dramatically against her restraints, her voice rising to a theatrical wail. "Move these cuffs to the front," she barked, her eyes darting accusingly at every deputy in sight. "I have brittle bone disease. My wrists will snap like toothpicks. And then you'll have a lawsuit the size of the Grand Canyon." When one deputy calmly explained that protocol required handcuffs to remain behind her back, she abruptly shifted gears. Narrowing her eyes at the officer, she hissed, "You're not even a real cop, are you? I know the real Sheriff Johnson. You're an imposter. A conspirator sent by the deep state." The bemused officer tried to suppress a chuckle as he asked for evidence of her claims. But Alexandria wasn't one to let facts get in the way of a good conspiracy. "I don't need to prove anything," she declared, her tone dripping with indignation. "You can check the Pentagon archives, if you even have clearance." Her accusations ricocheted wildly, now including allegations that the officers were part of a shadowy organization targeting her for knowing too much. She alleged ties to secret government missions, international diplomacy, and a pardon she claimed was signed by the president himself, though she conspicuously failed to name which one. Throughout her tirade, Alexandria demanded her phone, her wallet, and a proper lawyer, asserting that she had a team of attorneys on speed dial. When informed that her belongings would be returned after booking, she scoffed. "Oh, I see how it is," she sneered. "This is just another setup. I'm a whistleblower, and you're trying to silence me. Well, newsflash, I'll have CNN here before you can even fill out your little reports." Even as medical personnel approached to assess her condition, Alexandria didn't let up. "Good luck finding a vein," she snapped. "My blood pressure is through the roof because of your brutality." Her erratic behavior kept officers on edge, though they managed to maintain professionalism amid her chaotic accusations. By the time Alexandria was safely secured in the patrol car, she had implicated nearly everyone present in an elaborate plot against her, a spectacle befitting the title of Ultimate Florida Woman. When medical personnel arrived on the scene, Alexandria continued her incessant monologue, as if this solo performance were her final opportunity to tell the world her life story. "This is a trap. Everything is a trap," she shouted, her eyes wild. "Do you know how many times they've tried to silence me? I know big things, bigger than anyone here." Alexandria waved her hands incessantly, refusing to let the medical staff examine her. "I have cancer, spine issues, and Parkinson's. Do you think I can do all of this on my own? The president himself pardoned me. But who's going to listen to a poor woman with so many government secrets, huh? Around her, the police officers and medical staff exchanged glances, trying to maintain professionalism as they listened to her dramatic declarations. Despite her rants, the medical personnel confirmed that Alexandria was stable enough to be moved. But that didn't stop her from continuing her complaints. "I demand a phone call. And I want it to come from the real FBI. Not your fake agents, understood?" Alexandria said challengingly, as if she had just uncovered a vast conspiracy. As the police car prepared to leave, she turned back and continued to shout, "Remember this. When this all comes to light, you'll see I was right." The aftermath of the high-speed chase could only be described as chaos wrapped in comedy. The pursuit left behind a swath of destruction, including 3 heavily damaged police cruisers that now resembled crumpled soda cans and 1 Toyota Prius teetering on life support, its owner lamenting the cruel irony of being eco-conscious in a world of mayhem. Traffic on the busy stretch of A1A was paralyzed for hours, with bewildered drivers recounting their near-death encounters with a rogue truck piloted by Alexandria Mason. Some swore they saw her waving triumphantly as she outmaneuvered the police. Others were too shaken to say much at all. Despite the trail of wreckage and disruption, law enforcement displayed an impressive level of composure. "Our primary objective," stated a visibly weary but composed officer, "was ensuring Alexandria's safety. Well, as safe as one can be while hurtling down the highway at 120 miles per hour, and making sure she gets the help she so evidently needs. That help will, of course, come in the form of a sturdy jail cell." The officer's tone straddled the line between relief and exasperation, encapsulating the bizarre reality of policing in Florida. As Alexandria was finally escorted into the back of a squad car, her theatrical flair remained undiminished. She leaned dramatically out of the window, her bound hands still managing to make a small flourish, and declared with unmistakable pride, "Florida woman strikes again." Her voice echoed across the highway like a battle cry, eliciting smirks from some officers and groans from others. And indeed, she had struck again, leaving behind not just physical damage, but a legendary tale that would be recounted at precincts and Florida dinner tables for years to come. Alexandria Mason had proven, in her own chaotic way, that the Florida woman spirit was alive and well, even if it was destined to be temporarily housed in a cell block. As Alexandria Mason's wild ride through the streets of St. Augustine came to a crashing halt, it became clear that this episode was far more than just another case of reckless driving. It was a cautionary tale wrapped in absurdity. Her high-speed chase, eccentric behavior, and outlandish claims reminded everyone that no one is quite as unpredictable as the Florida woman on a mission. The aftermath, while filled with frustration and wreckage, also illuminated an important lesson, that even in the most bizarre and chaotic of circumstances, patience, persistence, and the human element of law enforcement must prevail. Despite the damage to police vehicles and the trauma inflicted on innocent bystanders, authorities kept their composure, knowing their true objective was not just to apprehend, but to ensure that Alexandria received the help she so clearly needed. In the end, this incident served as a stark reminder that sometimes the most unusual characters can spark the most unforgettable stories. While Alexandria's behavior may have been erratic, it was her wild defiance and refusal to play by any rulebook that truly captured the essence of the unpredictable Florida spirit. The lesson: stay alert, be patient, and never underestimate the lengths someone will go to make a lasting impression, especially if they're behind the wheel of a truck and convinced of their own legal immunity.